Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Mrs. T, but you can call me Anai, and this is School with Mrs. T. So I have at least 9 years experience in the classroom as a former primary school teacher, and I was a former recruiter for education recruitment as well. And so I have all those years of experience within the education field to be able to talk about all things school and all things school related. So let's get into it. Okay. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on GCSEs and GCSE tips, revision tips. So I think it's always really interesting that we always look to teachers to be able to answer the question of what's been really useful and what's been really helpful for children in terms of revision and what's been really helpful for GCSE students when they're coming up to the end of their exams, and A-level students what's been really helpful for them. But actually we missed the point of students and students themselves. Now, I had the chance, I've been privileged to be able to speak to an A-star student, so grades 8 and 9, and that's where this person is, that's where they sit. So, they've done really, really well. And I was privileged enough to be able to speak to them and just say, what was your secret? What is it that really helped you to be able to do really well in your exams? And so these are the tips that this young person came up with, and we're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. So we're going to go in ascending order. So the first tip is probably going to be number 8 on their list, but the top tip will come right at the end, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first one is planning your revision schedule. Now, this is easier at the beginning of the academic year or at the beginning of year 10, when you know the subjects that you're taking, the subjects that your son or daughter is taking, your children are taking. And so you can kind of plan and say, right, okay, this year you're going to be doing your coursework, and then next year you're going to be doing your exams, and this is what this looks like. And that's really, really useful at the beginning of the year, especially when they're at the beginning of year 10, when they're even starting their GCSEs. And then in the beginning of year 11, most secondary schools tend to do an information evening. They tend to actually give information. So we used to do an information evening for parents with children who are coming up to year 2 SATs, coming up to year 6 SATs. And the same goes for parents who have children who are coming up to GCSEs. And so the school will hold most likely will hold an information night to say that this is the kind of information, these are the websites that you might want to use, and give you some resources on websites that you might want to use to revise with your children. And this is the schedule. These are the things that we'll be putting in place as a school to be able to support your children. These are the exam schedules for next year. So because the information evening will most likely happen in September, they will be speaking about the exam schedules that will be coming up in the following June or July or May even. So have a look at those, attend those. They're really very useful, and you can also pick the brains of the teachers around your child to say, what else can I do? How else can I help? So number 7, they were saying, and I would agree with them, would be games. So things like Mastermind, things like Snap, things like just information facts. So those kinds of things, weakest link. What's all of the different facts. So depending on whatever subject you're looking at, you could have a look at just some random facts, some key facts. If you've got a if you've got a competitive teenager, then this will be right up their street, and you can work with them. You could work with them to actually come up with the game, to be able to plan this so that they are revising with you, and it's making it a little bit more fun, a little bit more enjoyable, and you might be learning a few things as well. I know I definitely did. Next thing would be acronyms. And so acronyms are things that are really, really helpful for remembering things, remembering patterns, remembering sayings, remembering things. So for instance, in science, we have Mrs. Gren or Mrs. Nerg, whichever way you want to put it. So that's to help you remember all of the things that living things need to do. You've got movement, you've got respire, you've got sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and you've got nutrition as well. So all of those things, those seven things that every living thing does. And so that's a really great way to be able to remember things. I used to have the acronym OU, or the saying, "Oh, you lovely darling." And that was to help my children remember the spelling rule of OULD. And so when we would practice spelling could, would, should, it would be, especially in phonics, because I was teaching upper key stage 1. And so we would say, shh, oh, you lovely darling. And that would be for should. And then you've got k, oh, you lovely darling. That would be for could. And that's a spelling rule straight from Read Write Inc. But you can use lots of different things to be able to help you to actually focus on whatever aspect, whatever concept, whatever thing that you're looking at. You can use acronyms, and they can be really helpful to bring things to memory when you're in the exam. So number 5, I would say note-taking or journaling. And note-taking has been proven as well to be able to help you remember when you handwrite notes. It's been proven to help you remember better. And so alongside that, what you would do, especially for things like poetry where you've got anthologies, it would be useful to be able to write down things, jot down things in maybe your revision journal, things that would help you remember. So key things about maybe the character, or the key patterns in that particular poem that you remember, to help jog your memory when you're in the exam. And so you tend to associate certain things and certain words now, because you've got, for instance, with RE, if you're doing an RE exam, you might, looking at Christianity, you might think, oh, that scripture is really useful, and so jot that down. And then in the exam, because you've been writing your notes and you've jotted that down to go with that, that will jog your memory to say, okay, that's that point, and you jot that down. That was really useful for this young person, and that might be useful for you as well. And so number 4, we have got, so going down, we've gone from 8, we're down to 4 now. And presenting, so presenting or teaching. So there's so many different steps in understanding and learning. So initially you start by learning and somebody teaching you, and you are practicing that skill. And after you've practiced that skill, then you begin to master that skill. And once you've mastered it, then you can teach it. And then you are a true master at that because of your level of understanding. So if we follow that same thread, if you really understand something, if your young person, if they really understand something, they should be able to stand up and maybe teach you, or give you a presentation. So that might be something for those young people who really enjoy presenting, really enjoy teaching. They might even make a video for you to be able to watch, and you could learn a fact or two. So that might be really useful. So have a think about maybe working with them to put a presentation together to teach the rest of the family, to teach their friends, to teach yourself. And that might be really useful for them, actually, because they have to go in depth in those subjects to be able to teach that particular subject to you and your family around you. Number 3 would be exam prep or timing. Well, exam prep with timing. And so as they're going through their papers and things, they need to be able to time themselves. So work with your young person perhaps to time themselves to see how long they're taking to answer those 3-mark, those 5-mark, those 7-mark questions, those essay questions. Are they jotting down the key points? Are they being concise? Are they being to the point? Are they also covering everything that they need to cover? Or are they just rushing through it all? And so give them that time and work with them to be able to time everything. So be able to work with your young person to time their exam, to time their exam questions. It's key questions that they'll need to focus on, really. It wouldn't be every single one. And then what you might do when you're happy with key questions, then maybe they might look at how long they're taking to answer a whole paper, perhaps. And this will help them to be much more concise with the facts that they're writing, to just focus on the most important things to be able to include in their exams. Number 2 would be, books. So, but very specific revision guides. So I'm definitely a big advocate for using the internet and using games online. We use them all the time in the classroom. They're absolutely essential. For some children, actually, they really find them useful. But then other children really find just books, actual physical books, really helpful and really handy. And revision guides, really, really handy. I know when I was much, much younger, I found revision guides really, really helpful for me when I was actually studying for my GCSEs and my A levels. And I used revision guides when I was tutoring young people, when I was working with my Key Stage 2 class of Year 6s. I used revision guides all of the time. And the particular brand that, and this isn't sponsored, but if CGP want to come and speak to me, CGP books have been around for the longest time, because I know I used them and they were around before that. And they were so very helpful. And this young person was saying that they were the best. They were the best books for them to be able to actually understand things, because the way that they break down things into the simplest, the most complex concepts, they'll break them down. Yes, they are cheesy, of course. Yes, they do have some jokes in there that you think, oh goodness me, but they break down information into the simplest form, and it's just so easy to understand, and they can work through those. And because they are bite-sized chunks, usually in CGP books, they use just bite-sized chunks, then it's much more useful for your young person as they're going through their revision, and working towards their GCSEs. Now, the top tip, the absolute top tip that this young person said to me, and bearing in mind this is an A-star student, the top tip that they said to me was past papers, using past papers. And I couldn't agree more, because we used past papers when I was working with my Year 2s, when I was working with my Year 6s. We used past papers all of the time, and it just helps you with familiarization of how an exam is laid out. It helps you with that timing and your exam prep, because you're familiar with the layout, because you're familiar with the fact that, right, okay, at certain points I am going to have to explain my points more, I am going to have to show my workings, I am going to have to do this. All of that is really, really useful, so that when you go into an exam, you're much more prepared, rather than going into the exam and that's the first time that you're looking at a past paper. That's not helpful for anybody. That's not to say that they won't do this in schools anyway. They'll do this in schools, so it wouldn't be that you would be the first person to introduce a past paper to them. However, if you are working at home, working in school, everybody is working together towards the same goal, and practice makes perfect. Absolutely. So I would definitely say that the top tip, the number one tip for exams, for GCSE prep, is past papers. And it may seem like, oh, everybody has said that before, and I've heard that from other people before, but it's true. It's because it works. It's because it works. And you can get these online easily. They're easily accessible. There's some that you may need to pay for, but more often than not, you'll be able to get them for free. Have a look online to see if you can find any past papers. That is going to be your number one tool to be able to survive GCSEs with your young person. So hopefully this video was really useful for you. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And let me know what your top tips are, because they might not have been covered in this video, but what are your top tips that you might want to share with somebody else? All right. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.